welcome to the How China Works podcast. My name is Brendan Davis. My co-host Yingying will be with us in just a moment, quite literally. We are doing a special episode today from our dueling locations, although hopefully they're not dueling in a metaphorical sense, just in terms of we're in two places right now. We want to do a quick check-in to connect with you, our dear listener, and talk about what's happening in the world. And we have this unique perspective because of the show we do and because of our different lives and our travels. But you know what? I want to not talk too much now because I want to introduce my friend, my co-host, Yingying Li. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing very well, Brendan.
Nice. And you are in Beijing, as we have sort of established, and I'm in LA. How are things for you? How have you been doing?
Wow, much more relaxed compared with the first few weeks, right?
Exactly.
Here in Beijing, spring come back, beautiful flowers everywhere. Basically, I came out to bike a little bit, mostly to the park. As probably you know, they have like strict measures to check temperature and wearing a mask. But much more relaxed. Like this morning, I'm talking to you. I'm kind of like happy to see that we can actually share some thoughts on this.
Absolutely. I'm really glad we're doing this, and we are going to follow a style that we've done a few times when we've done some quick catch-ups, and it's what I've been doing with some of our common friends, Kevin Geiger and Jonathan Garrison. Mm-hmm. Both got new episodes of other podcasts out today with those guys, and this is going to go out the day that we're recording it. So we're going to have all three shows out there, and I'm really happy to do this in that style where we're basically, in theory, not really going to edit this. We're going to add a little music for your enjoyment, and then it's just the conversation. So to start with, let's hear check-in from you. What's kind of the on-the-ground reality now? What's your experience? You know, what's your sort of life like? And what was it in the recent past, the situation that you're in there in China?
I guess you're asking about my new normal, like most Chinese new normal right now, right?
Exactly.
And I've been talking with a few friends. We check on each other almost every week, some good friends, to have webinars to share about what's going on with our life. Well, this is really our new normal already for most of us. Like we every day wake up in the morning checking the news and seeing. We don't actually focus too much on the numbers anymore, but we do focus on international news, like for me and my friends over here. And of course, today is a very special day. Today is Tomb Sweeping Day here in China, Qing Ming Festival.
Right.
It's a day, it's a time that when we can show our feelings and to show our respect and show our comfort actually to our beloved ones who died. And also it's a moment probably for a long time, for the first time, I just saw that from our 朋友圈 WeChat post that everybody's posting some sort of like condolences, and this kind of show their great morale, right? To actually their beloved ones, and also to see China in the Beijing Tiananmen Square. There is fly to the half.
The flag is half mast.
Yes,
now, is it normally like that for tomb sweeping, or is that because of the situation?
Actually, because it's only for some very important, influential, like national figures,
right?
Or for disaster like earthquake in 2008, flood in like Wuhan previously.
Yeah,
and there's but this is such a moment for all the country to kind of come together, at least online, to really pay attention to this and to be able to be silent for a moment. And I think it's very important to all of us.
How is the coronavirus, although, of course, China's in a very different place. The U.S., of course, is close to 2 months behind. where China was, I think. The different, Worldometer and some of the other sites are very specific about it. So that's a generalization. But basically here in the States, we're a lot farther behind China, of course. And so the restrictions here are pretty serious, and we'll get to that in a moment. But how has this affected, for instance, this holiday, Tomb Sweeping Day? I mean, you described it well. There are some cultures, especially in the South here in the U.S., where ancestral rituals are important. There's a event that happens a lot, especially in the South, often called Celebration Day, and it's or Homecoming Day. Different cultures, different subsets of our culture have these different names, but basically it's where you go home to the family hometown, to the local cemetery, and it's very similar. You actually, sweep off the graves and you put out flowers, and maybe you have a picnic at the cemetery or nearby with everybody. And that's not so common throughout the States, but Tomb Sweeping Day, typically, a lot of people will travel and they will visit the ancestral home or graves. And how is that being affected? Are people traveling for that kind of thing, or people, like you mentioned, online? There's sort of like online remembrances. Is that how people are doing it this year?
It is affected, or it has changed this year because of this special coronavirus moment, right? Everybody's staying at home, avoiding crowds. So I have a really personal story that is related to my family. We were supposed to go to tomb sweeping for my ancestors and for my grandfather and grandmother. But we, in the last minute, got canceled because my father and my parents basically living in a very traditional town in China. So, of course, in our mind, in our heart, we need to do this. This is probably one of the few things in the year that are very important for us to follow and to do this kind of gathering with other family members, like father family members, not just from our small core family, right? But probably just 1 week ago, my mother told me that, well, we were supposed to do this and this and this. We got a notice that it's not encouraged, or we kind of like have to make the choice, or have to cancel this. Instead, we do very small online, or we do some even more smaller gathering, like my father and and his probably brother and sister, just getting 3 or 5 people together instead of going to the site and to burn the paper and to do this kind of thing and to getting a meal together after that. So it is affecting probably millions of Chinese family. And one more thing I want to point out, 2 days ago when I was biking in Beijing near my neighborhood, actually I spent the 35 minutes biking about in the afternoon when the sunset is there, right? I thought it's so beautiful. I need to come out to see all the flower in the street. And when I come back, it's getting darker and darker and colder. But I'm still biking. I was still biking until I almost got home and I cross a bridge. That kind of bridge, right? I saw them like a flash. I saw some ashes actually flying, and I smell something. Okay. But I feel, what's going on? Like I was alert at the time. Sure. So when I biked over there, I saw 3 to 5 groups of small group, like 1 to 3 person, were scrolling down and burning the paper while looking at a further direction to probably pay pay some commemorate time. Actually,
like the direction maybe where they're from. They were sort of like, if they're from the West.
For example, I heard from my friends that normally those people are probably have to stay in Beijing, but they're probably their hometown where their parents or relatives are not in Beijing. Yeah, and they do this as a way to show their particular particular feelings on how they, miss them.
That's very nice. And I, for the sake of people who don't know, you referencing burning paper, burning paper. There is. I have a drawer full of this, which actually sort of horrified my old Chinese assistant when I ordered all this once upon a time at my old job. But I have a drawer full of hell money, which is that paper money.
Hell money.
Which is the it's these ridiculous denominations of currency, and it's obviously fake. It doesn't look like anybody's real currency, but it's a metaphorical thing. And the idea is that you burn that, or people will have like paper iPhones or a paper sports car or a paper house or a paper guitar if somebody was a guitar player, but the idea is that these are sort of like these burnt offerings, which this kind of thing's been around for tens of thousands of years probably, but there's these, in this case, people kind of hunker down like in a safe place to burn this on the sidewalk. And they will, some people will have a specific, they'll have words they say. They'll either have a prayer or a thought or meditation, or they'll just do this and they'll think about the relative. So, I've actually done that myself in Beijing. I did that myself for my ancestors. Okay. Yeah, I saw a bunch of people down there out my window one day. You know my home studio pretty well, and out that window, I saw some people probably 2 years ago doing that. And I thought, that's nice. And I knew what was up. So I kind of just discreetly went down. I took a handful because I've got a lot of this stuff. I ordered like a box. I have enough for like 100 families to burn this for some reason. But yeah, I went down and I did my thing and, said my little words for my relatives. And so that was my way of kind of feeling. That's a tradition that I adopted a little bit. So it's a lot of, it's mostly online remembrances. So you smelled kind of the burning, like, what's that? And you're like, oh, okay. Some people are out there doing that.
That's the moment when I saw this, I stopped because I was biking and I stopped for a moment. Look at these people. And I had a deep thoughts came to me that, wow, this is such a moment that I can probably give you a strike to your soul that it's time to think of, to miss someone afar, right?
Yeah.
And this coronavirus whole thing changes so many people's life, not just life, but also mindset about absolutely. What is important and who are important to us. I felt that it is a moment that we kind of witnessing our cultures are changed. I think worldwide that people have to adapt to this new normal, and it's gonna form a new type of culture worldwide.
Well, yeah. So what are your thoughts about that? Where do you think, I'll talk about the local here a little bit, but I like what you just went to. What do you think some of the longer term results of this shared experience will be on the China side in terms of differences in the way people approach time, meetings, work, travel, family connections, etc.? What do you think? Do you think this will have some fundamental changes in China specifically? I certainly do on this side, but you first, please.
Well, this probably changed some fundamental aspects for how people work, like around the world, but specifically in China. I saw huge waves of digital lives, stories sharing online about how they work from home, how they entertain themselves, how they actually maintain the family together. As you probably heard the news that divorce rate got skyrocket. I don't have the news source right now in my hand, but just think, imagine when people are actually all in this mode, and there's a lot of needs need to be met, right? So I felt that it's changing the way people work, mostly work from home. It does not necessarily it's not necessarily a good thing, because probably considering about the Chinese entrepreneurship particular spirit here and focus on speed and like work 24/7, this kind of thing. I heard from my friend that they actually don't like that much. They just begging to come back to normal to work if they can.
They're looking forward to 996 again, or a similar version of nonstop, always on work. Interesting.
What doesn't change among Chinese is still this kind of spirit of hardworking and, of course, trying to produce as much as possible. What indeed got changed is at this moment, like more and more news and links and discussion around how we can adapt to this, right? Everybody is trying their best. Probably a lot of people become freelancers, right? And a lot of people not just become freelancer, but they are trying very creatively in shifting their business online. But not every business could be online. And that's why I've received lots of questions and lots of requests on how they can actually be better connected online.
Okay.
Like my friend said, Yingying, like what would be the best way to, first of all, to stay connected, and also what would be the best way to create your, basically IP, your brand online. In the world right now, their media's role is more and more prominent right now.
Yeah.
They either hurt you for giving you fake news, or they can accelerate your pace of connecting online.
Yeah.
But it all depends on your choice.
That's interesting, and this is such a difference. This really highlights a cultural difference that we have explored. In case somebody's listening to this and they're kind of new to the show, this is, oh my gosh, this is season 3 of this. We have had so many conversations. We've done deep dives looking at things historically. We've interviewed so many people. We've had all kinds of talks ourselves, dissecting all these possibilities of the changing society and how the cultural differences manifest, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. And I got to tell you that the conversation here is very different, because the conversation is much more about, people sort of expecting that, and of course, let me say this up front as the disclaimer, not out of an overly strong sense of political correctness, but out of a sense of context. Of course, many people don't have the luxury of working from home or telecommuting. It's not everybody's job to have sort of professional or entrepreneurial or, or just an office job of some kind. But for those of us who do, what I'm hearing a lot is this idea that's really the opposite of that. Now, there is a degree of, it'd be great to be able to get back out and meet people or have lunches or breakfasts or dinners or socialize. And, I'm looking forward to going back to that office I normally don't like to visit, for some people who have to travel to different offices for work. But the dominant thing that I'm hearing anyway, non-scientific, but notable, is there's a big conversation brewing in the States about how much this highlights the absolute waste of time and waste of our lives consumed by so much busy work, so many, tasks and errands. I'm going to kind of mangle this a little bit because I wasn't queued up to throw it out there as a quote, but there's a quote that essentially is in terms of your priorities and managing your time well, and not working 20 hours a day, but to work smart, not hard. And in the time that you're working smart, you're working hard in bursts, But there's this idea of, could this meeting be a call, or could that be an email, or could this be a text, or could this appointment be a quick check-in by phone, email, text, Slack, something like that. And the conversation here is focused on, okay, now this is too much at home isolation time for most people's comfort. If you're self-employed like us, this is kind of normal. You're out in the world even more than me. I'm normally in a home office for the most part, so it's not that different than my normal day to day. But I guess the capper on this is to say that people here are looking at this as a chance to fundamentally reevaluate the flaws in our current thinking and historical practices and to make new rules for the new normal, not to go back. I mean, there is no going back to the old normal. Certain things will come back the way they were. Many things will shift a little. Some things will go away completely or change dramatically and you won't recognize it. So for here, it's an opportunity to reclaim parts of your life that you have been giving up. Now, we say this a lot, and I'm going to cue this up for you to follow up on it, please. But, of course, I'm summarizing again for people who haven't heard one of our other, 100-something episodes where we talked about this a lot with a lot of detail with a lot of people. But culturally in China, there is the idea, of course, in many ways, China is developed, ED, past tense. But in many other ways, they are still developing. And there's this work ethic and this drive that you indicated. In China, they have these sayings in Chinese that in English are either like add oil, which is like, add oil, keep going,
加油.
加油, keep going, fight. There's these ideas of we have to continue to push to get our society where we want to be. And so people must do what they have to do. And so we're going to have very different reactions. So I'm fascinated you telling me. I haven't heard I've talked to a lot of people back there, but I haven't heard anyone say what you just said, which is that, people are, ready to get back to working like the crazy hours and everything else. Because do you think there's a sense of losing ground? Like this has been a pause and maybe it's like, we have to really get back in this and work twice as hard. Do you have a sense like that? Is that kind of part of these conversations that you're having with your friends who can't wait to go back to to never having their WeChat turned off, basically?
Well, obviously not all my friends that they want to go back to court as soon as possible. And I also heard a portion of them indeed told me that it's a great time to reflect, to read books where they want, to spend more time with their family. Of course, like myself, I enjoy this moment to be able to go out to visit some sites in Beijing where I've never seen such a Beijing in my life. Never, ever. Like where there's very, very broad roads in front of me with so much space, and springtime, flowers were in two sides and quiet. Whenever I pass a school, when I pass, even a big mall, especially in the afternoon time, probably during the work time, no rush hour, and it's fantastic to ride a bicycle like that. It feels like you were riding a bike in the beach,
or like a movie set.
So yeah. It's. I would say that it's good to help a lot of people to find work-life balance, but if you know how to do it.
Well, I know that was part of your interest. Was we talked about this?
I feel like it's more like the United States, where I live, like in Utah and San Francisco, where I can go to Ocean Beach all the time.
Yeah, it's nice. Yeah, I got to spend a little time up there before things got so bad here, and I know you had been really keyed into this, which I appreciated, which was. We talked about something previously that I think is worth kind of throwing out there as a thought just to have in this conversation, which is because, China, again, broad strokes, painting with a broad brush, but generally accurate as far as stereotypes or generalizations go, which is China, collective culture, teamwork, the group over the individual, and how
endurance,
right? Well, and how specifically that mindset would be put to the test when you guys were all like on lockdown, which we now are, and you're basically out of. I mean, some people are still dealing with things, or if they're returning Chinese, they've got to quarantine before they can mix, whatever. But so in terms of this reflection, you're having your reflective moments. Have you had any big insights, any big personal insights about, I don't know, anything, how you spend your time, how we should reprioritize, what are you thinking about this? And then I'll kind of give you my side here where it's very different.
Well, culture as a word came to my mind from time to time, almost all the time. When I think of lockdown, what lockdown means in different countries, like in US and in China. When it first came out, so on the day that Wuhan got locked down, and probably it's the time when most people, Chinese, choose to kind of like self-lockdown or lockdown, by rules, whatever. I started from that time to reflect on what made this happen. How could this happen? Because it never happened in PRC's history, right?
Yeah.
And of course, it's shocking in the beginning, but later we learned that there are few words, I would say, consider the cultural elements that make that happen. Again, you mentioned a few of words already, like collective culture and endurance for the hardships, and community and regulation and follow the rules, whatever, right? And it is indeed in our mindset. I'm representing a lot of my peers as we talk almost every day on, okay, how are things going on with you within this lockdown? And I talk with my friends in Wuhan. I have great friends in Wuhan because
you have friends and family from Wuhan, Hubei province, and we talked about that into this.
Even the school principal from Hubei University, where I graduated from, right? And I kept close touch with my professors and colleagues in Hubei, in Wuhan especially. Well, they were very strong people. They really endured all of this hardship, unimaginable sacrifice, unimaginable. So I would say that, of course, right now you see that lockdown become like new normal, sort of quote unquote new normal in many countries, not just in the US, Europe. And it probably will become more like that in the next few days. We don't know. We hope not. But as you think about what it takes for an individual to be able to, willing to maximize their life at the same time.
Yeah.
At the same time, understand there's a big picture over there. How, if you don't even think about the big picture, no one is thinking of the big picture. What would happen, especially when disaster like this happens?
Yeah.
Everyone is thinking about, I don't give a fuck, or I don't like this kind of rules. In normal time, certainly, yes, fine. But in crisis time, especially the global crisis like this, we have to think about others.
Yeah.
So I feel like essentially it drives us into a thinking mode, right? We have to think bigger than we were in the normal time. And how would we extract the best part of the culture, probably, to put into our life principles or to put into our life action guidance to help us get through this. And I feel like by discussing this with a lot of my friends in Wuhan, right, and my family relatives, actually, they are willing to wait for the good news to come. Like right now, basically, they are much more like people in Wuhan started normally getting back to work.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that, I talk with them for the last 2 months, almost every week. I check on good friends from there. And no one showed me they were in a panic or frustrating words. Mostly they say 加油. Mostly they're saying that we try to be alive, like, save ourselves, save family, and something like that.
Right.
It's a very interesting moment to see how they express themselves during this time.
Are your people all doing okay, just on a personal level?
I do. I do hear some, like, of my friends, a good colleague of mine, when we were teaching in Brazil, and I heard that her father got infected. I don't know. I will check back to see what's going on.
You don't know if he's recovered or...
Yeah, but I also saw a lot of my friends on Facebook and LinkedIn from other countries. They start to having that kind of post coming out that either they are affected or they're other relatives, and
Sure.
it's disheartening to read news like that. Every day is like when you open internet, you're waiting for like 10 more explosions that are coming to you,
Pretty
and you
much.
kind of have
Yeah.
to deal with that normal. At the same time, gave help. Because every single time I saw a message like that, I try to add oil, just 加油
Right,
for
right,
them.
right.
If I can do anything I could help, I think it's a moment of sort of solidarity.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been glad to see that secondhand from my WeChat and my various people in China who I talk to, and they're like you telling me these stories. It's an interesting time in the States because as of today, again, we're recording this. I'll release it later. I'll get this out as soon as I can do the editing here. This will be out in a couple hours from us talking, which is unusual. But seeing the response here, because without going on about it, God knows people have written tons of articles about this, but we have a unique perspective, you and I, as people who've both been expats in other places, and obviously who both know U.S., both know China to different degrees. And, we don't have so much of a unified identity in the U.S., of course. And if anything, what with our political divisions, we're more polarized than ever. And, like a lot of people have written articles with this is the assumption, and then they've gone on to make some other point. My point is that because we don't have a unified identity, there's not a unified collective response. And I'm a fan of the states' rights. And I was talking to Susie about this a while ago, explaining the difference between federal rights and states' rights, and how, in China, it's all like federal, it's all national level decisions on the big stuff. But in the U.S., there's national, and then there's states have certain prerogative, and some states have done better than others. And without getting in the weeds of all that, I'm very happy that I live in and am in California, which, despite our other problems sometimes, our leaders are taking it really seriously. The people in New York, again, delay. You see the horrible and all the issues, population density in New York City, and they've got a special challenge, and it's such a port and such a border entry point, etc. But I guess what I'm getting at is that here, there's still not a collective sense across all sectors that I see online of people that we're all in this together. There is that among like my immediate circles of people, and kind of like my professional circles and my greater friends circle. But you have governors in the U.S. who are saying masks are stupid, and stay at home that's dumb. Get out there and go to church and go to this barbecue. And they're just creating, coronavirus hotspots. And so it's when I was talking to Kevin, you'll appreciate this, and I think anyone listening will appreciate this as well. But Kevin Geiger reminded me yesterday of something that I had said when I first got back here and was dealing with people's just ignorance about it before it really broke here. And I said something that amused him so much that he wrote it down and remembered it. But I said something about how surreal it was to return from the future in China to the land that science forgot. To a place where people debate basic science or debate basic protocols or basic facts. And, anytime I've had to do I was wearing a mask just to go to the grocery store with my mom. Well, of course, I was technically self-quarantining, and I only left the house a few times. But I wear a mask if I go out, and I'm not going out now. But the point is, I wear a mask. And they've just now, today, as we're releasing this, there was an order from the federal government that encouraging U.S. citizens should all wear cloth masks. And I hate to break it to you, those cloth masks, they're not doing much. It's better than nothing. It's better than nothing. And if you don't have, because all of our PPE gear is supposed to go to healthcare providers, and that's great. So if you have, again, I'm fortunate I have a small personal supply thanks to Susie, who shipped me some stuff. So I've got enough masks and some gloves for me if I need to, whatever. God forbid I get sick or the roommate gets sick and I've got to go with to help with something, I've got enough to cover my own ass. And that's kind of the perspective that you sort of have to take care of yourself. There's no sense that I can see, my perspective. There's no sense here of a common savior. Okay. So again, without getting too political, the fact of the matter is that whether you love or you hate, our president here in the U.S., you can't. There is no good faith argument that their response was adequate or professional. It fails the laugh test to suggest that they were on top of things. And the governor of my home state, Brian Kemp, yesterday, the day before, and there was a press conference, and he was essentially he got up and said, like, no one knew that you could be asymptomatic, and we're just learning this. He said this, it was either yesterday or the day before. I'm like, I've known it for over 2 months. I knew it when they were first reporting it in China in kind of later January after they'd been studying from December in Wuhan. So for those of us who were cursed with knowing a little more than our fellow citizens from this perspective, it's a little horrifying, frankly. I mean, I'm not sitting here scared as I talk to you, but I am angry, disappointed, fearful for other people who don't take it seriously. And that governor, for instance, won't issue a stay-at-home order, or he's just now going to do it after all this political pressure because he's one of Trump's boys, right? So when you have this lack of a intelligently science-driven effort from the top down, you have chaos. And so on our side, I want to ask you, again, for the sake of the listener, we talked beforehand, the things we discuss. I know what I feel, and I'll say this because I think you're going to have a more optimistic note, and I'd rather end on your more optimistic note, frankly, from my take. Where this is going, it will, the upsides is it will cause a reevaluation of work-life balance. We talk about that a lot here. And I think this is going to underline a lot of that. And it's going to necessitate some real conversations of how much can be telework, how much can be done. The downside, reduce staff. You're going to realize who's redundant and where there's waste. And so there'll also be people after we come back where their job isn't needed because the company figured out, we got 5 people. We only need 2 to do this thing. But I'm really mostly concerned about the estimates of, maybe 200,000 plus dead in the next few months in the U.S. So China's got a much more encouraging picture. Please tell me some good news besides making me wish that I was back in Beijing.
Well, remember on the last day of 2019, we recorded a summary about our season. Yeah. You asked me, the last question you asked me, what is my New Year resolution?
Oh gosh, and I'm sorry, I don't remember.
At that time. Yeah, no one at that time. I can tell you.
Okay.
There's 2 words coming out from me at that time. Without hesitation that time. That was world peace. Remember that?
That's right, I do.
And I really, right after that, since late January, Wuhan get locked down. And especially with what's going on for the last 2-3 months, that I keep these words keep coming up to me while I was biking, while I was working, while I was talking with my friends, that I want to add one more wish or aspect to that is world safety. Because right now, among all the arguments, among all the media links about everything, every little bite of this news about these keywords on internet, we cannot forget one thing only, that is saving lives.
Yeah.
Saving lives should be our priority, no matter for which country, which president, and which culture, which community. If we cannot really keep that in mind all the time, we'll be always arguing because we are human. Human nature tend to, of course, offend, right?
Yeah.
So we have to think about saving lives is number one priority here right now. So what should we really, if I can have a message for all the governors, as you just mentioned that with your story, with your feeling, if I could have one message, that is, it's probably the best time in the history that we could learn from each other. Like
Yeah.
I've been
Yeah.
advocating this all the time, East meets West. How about
Sure.
that in a situation like COVID-19? How can we learn from each other? How can East learn from the West? How can West learn from East to
Right.
save lives? We only have this one goal only. Because without this, because the world is so much connected, if United States right now controls the situation and China like ruined whatever, if China win and the US lost, it doesn't make sense. It
Yeah.
doesn't make sense. Like, it doesn't make sense for the politicians. It doesn't make sense for an individual like us, because we all know that this is God created universe right now. We are so much infecting everybody is affecting everyone else.
Yeah.
So we have to understand how to learn from each other. I think for the Easterners, for like a Chinese, what I have been witnessing as our fellow citizens over here is that, of course, we like eat 小龙虾 lobsters during the spring and summer time when getting together with friends and having beers. We like to treat people to dinner while we want to initiate a business relationship.
Right.
We want to meet people to form a personal relationship 关系 so that we believe that would help us. That's all our culture.
Right.
But now it has to be changed. We have to adapt the more formal, professional way of networking. It's like giving a phone call,
Yeah.
or having an online meeting. And now Chinese are adapting. And we also have to follow the rules and try not, utilize, combined with the discipline that we have, to add one more layer. Okay, let's just save lives first. Let's think about how we can change each other. Of course, it's painful. It is painful. Of course, there probably will be a few people at this moment are like, oh, okay. Of course, it's like any country will complain about all the matters, but at the end of the day, there's no perfect solution if you don't start changing yourself, adapting yourselves. I would say for the US, what I've been witnessing right now is I can't imagine. This is my direct message. I cannot imagine if right now I'm living in the US without wearing a mask.
Yeah.
I mean, like, a lot of people keep asking me, Yingying, how are you doing? Are you okay? They know that I I'm in San Francisco a lot. Basically, they checking on me all the time. Do you need a mask? Can I send some masks to you? I got this message all the time even from my friends in Wuhan.
Oh,
There
okay.
are things about me while locked down. I received a few messages the last few days from my friends in Wuhan, my professor in Hubei universities. They were asking, Yingying, how are you doing? Do you need anything?
Yeah.
And like make me feel like, wow. And they mention mask all the time. So for me, I wouldn't imagine that I'm out without wearing a mask, right? I don't feel safe. That's kind of like a new normal for Chinese right now.
Do you think do you think people are still going to default to masks in public, just like everybody? Do you think, I mean, maybe until a vaccine, for instance, or until there's a treatment of some kind, do you think people are just going to wear masks constantly when they're out for the foreseeable future?
I heard from media, there's an online influencer. Actually, I wouldn't call him an influencer. He's a Dr. Zhang Wenhong. He's probably like the Dr. Fauci and Dr. Zhong Yanshan, right? All those two figures in China.
Yeah, they're the leading medical authorities, basically.
Yeah. medical. I do see this kind of KOL, key opinion leader, growing, and I think it's a trend for general public to listen to professional KOLs instead of just like a Taobao KOLs. You know what I mean?
Nice.
It's a time for us to listen
or anyone
to
who puts that hashtag in their profile. Don't listen to them.
Yeah. And Dr. Zhang Wenhong, from time to time, told us in public that we might have to face this even in October. So, nobody can say for sure when will this end. But when this kind of news coming out, we are prepared. We have to get prepared, at least physically, to get our mask up. I mean, in Beijing, it's getting warmer and warmer. I don't feel comfortable actually wearing a mask outside.
Sure.
I don't feel comfortable. But I don't feel safe if I get the mask off. So that's exactly the thing that I, as an adult, as a professional, as someone know what I'm doing, and I have to make a choice. I have to choose between getting comfort,
comfort or safety.
Safety. So I think it's very important. All of us need to make the choice individually in their mindset, no matter you are Chinese or American, no matter you're from which culture, which kind of people, society, right? I feel like it's a moment for us to be more rational than ever, to treat your life seriously.
Well, unless you have any objections, I think that's an awesome place to sort of leave this chat. I'll say this and then see if you have any other thoughts. I mean, for the sake of again, you, the listener, checking this out, we appreciate you listening as always. And we pretty much moved into a place because you, Yingying, are there in China, and a lot of our guests are either in China or China time. Not always, but basically you're doing most of the interviews these days, and then I'm sort of adding my little 2 bits, in the questions ahead of time, or helping do the intros, outros and stuff. But so you're kind of driving the train, and you're going to continue to bring us interviews as possible. You're working on a few right now, probably?
Yes.
Some scheduling?
We have interviews every week scheduled for the next few weeks.
Nice. Very nice. Well, it's really great to see you, and I'm glad that we're both healthy. I'm really grateful that we're both healthy. And I would say that it's probably most unforgettable in our lives to be getting through this all together. Could not agree more. Yingying, thank you so much. I'll see you soon, and we'll be bringing some more shows to people next week.
Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, our dear listeners, for your great support. And please leave a message to us. We do want to have you on our show if you have a burning desire to say to our people, our listeners here.
Yes, burning desire is important. You can visit that's my other show. You can visit howchinaworkspodcast.com, and there's a contact form on there. Of course, you can check us out on pretty much all the socials. Search the show in all the common podcatchers or wherever you listen to podcasts. And of course, I'll be putting a few links here in the show notes. And Yingying, I'll see you soon.